Hello. Today, we'll explore the rich and complex history of the U.S. state of Georgia, a state whose journey from a British colony to a modern political and cultural center mirrors the broader history of the United States. Spanning wars, economic transformations, and civil rights struggles, Georgia's story is filled with pivotal moments and influential figures. Let's dive into the key eras, events, and individuals that shaped Georgia's identity. 1. Colonial Georgia, 1732 to 1776. Georgia was founded in 1732 by British General James Oglethorpe as the last of the original 13 American colonies. The colony was intended to serve multiple purposes: a haven for debtors and the poor, a place where religious freedom could flourish, and as a buffer zone between the prosperous British colonies to the north and Spanish Florida to the south. Oglethorpe envisioned Georgia as a utopia with strict laws that prohibited slavery and alcohol, intending to create a self-sufficient moral society. Early settlers included English, Scots, and a group of Sephardic Jews who established one of the first Jewish communities in America. However, these strict rules were not popular among the colonists. Many settlers, especially those familiar with the economic success of neighboring South Carolina's slave-based plantations, began lobbying for the legalization of slavery. In 1750, Georgia lifted its ban on slavery, marking a major turning point in the colony's development. With this change, large-scale plantations began to spread, particularly in the fertile lands of the coastal lowlands, setting the stage for Georgia's future agricultural economy. 2. The American Revolution and Georgia's role, 1775 to 1783. The American Revolution was a deeply divisive time for Georgia, as it was the youngest and least populous of the 13 colonies, and its residents were split between patriots and loyalists. In 1776, Georgia officially joined the other colonies in declaring independence from Britain, though it faced internal divisions throughout the war. One of the state's most notable contributions to the revolution was Button Gwinnett, a signer of the Declaration of Independence and later the governor of Georgia. However, Georgia's coastal capital, Savannah, was captured by British forces in 1778, becoming a key strategic location for the British Southern Campaign. Despite this, Patriot forces won significant victories, such as the Battle of Kettle Creek in 1779, where militia forces managed to disrupt Loyalist troops. The Siege of Savannah in 1779, a joint Franco-American attempt to recapture the city, ended in failure, cementing British control of Georgia until the end of the war in 1782. Despite the challenges, Georgia ratified the U.S. Constitution in 1788, becoming the fourth state to join the new union. The revolution not only secured Georgia's independence but also established it as an integral part of the nascent United States. 3. The Cotton Kingdom and Economic Growth, 1789 to 1860. After the Revolution, Georgia's economy boomed, driven by agriculture, particularly the cultivation of cotton. Eli Whitney's invention of the cotton gin in 1793 revolutionized cotton production, making it easier and faster to process, and Georgia soon became one of the largest cotton producers in the South. The rise of the cotton economy was inextricably linked to the expansion of slavery. By the early 19th century, the state's wealth was heavily dependent on slave labor, with vast plantations spread across its fertile lands. As Georgia's economy grew, so did its political influence. The state's capital moved from Savannah to Augusta, then to Milledgeville, reflecting its expanding interior population. Georgia's political leaders became staunch defenders of states' rights and slavery, playing a prominent role in the growing sectional tensions between the North and South. During this period, Georgia also saw the development of its infrastructure, including the construction of railroads, which further boosted its agricultural exports and linked its economy more closely to national markets. 4. The Trail of Tears and Native American Removal, 1830s. While Georgia's economy flourished, its treatment of Native Americans during this period remains one of the darkest chapters in its history. The discovery of gold in northern Georgia in 1828 intensified pressure to remove Native Americans, particularly the Cherokee, from their ancestral lands. Although the Cherokee Nation attempted to resist this pressure through legal means, winning a significant case in the U.S. Supreme Court in Worcester v. Georgia, 1832, President Andrew Jackson and the state of Georgia ignored the ruling. In 1838, the forced removal of the Cherokee and other tribes began, an event known as the Trail of Tears. Thousands of Native Americans were forcibly relocated to present-day Oklahoma, and many perished due to harsh conditions along the way. This event left an indelible mark on Georgia's history, symbolizing the violent displacement of indigenous peoples in favor of expansion and economic gain. 5. Georgia and the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. Georgia was one of the first states to secede from the Union, declaring its departure on January 19, 1861. As a major cotton producer and defender of slavery, Georgia was a critical player in the Confederate States of America. The state supplied troops, goods, and critical railroad connections to the Confederate war effort. Georgia's largest city, Atlanta, became a key logistical hub for the Confederacy due to its strategic railroads and manufacturing. The Civil War brought great destruction to Georgia, especially during General William T. Sherman's infamous March to the Sea in 1864. Beginning with the capture and burning of Atlanta, Sherman's troops cut a path of destruction across the state, from Atlanta to Savannah. The campaign was designed to cripple the South's economy and will to fight, and it left a legacy of ruin in Georgia. Savannah was spared the same fate as Atlanta when it surrendered peacefully in December 1864. Sherman's march was a turning point in the war and hastened the Confederacy's defeat. 6. Reconstruction and the Jim Crow era, 1865 to 1940s. After the Civil War, Georgia faced the difficult task of rebuilding its economy and society. The Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877, was marked by efforts to reintegrate the Southern states into the Union and to secure rights for formerly enslaved African Americans. Georgia was placed under military rule for several years as it resisted federal attempts to enforce civil rights. The state was readmitted to the Union in 1870 after agreeing to accept the 14th and 15th Amendments, which granted citizenship and voting rights to Black Americans. However, the end of Reconstruction saw the rise of segregationist laws under the Jim Crow system. By the late 19th century, Georgia had implemented laws that enforced racial segregation and disenfranchised African Americans through poll taxes, literacy tests, and violence. The economy of Georgia also shifted during this time, with sharecropping becoming the dominant labor system in the post-slavery South. Sharecropping trapped many African Americans and poor whites in cycles of debt and poverty, perpetuating economic inequality in the state. 7. The Civil Rights Movement in Georgia, 1950s to 1960s. Georgia, particularly Atlanta, played a significant role in the national civil rights movement. Atlanta was the birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who became one of the most iconic leaders of the movement, advocating for nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience to combat racial injustice. King's leadership in events like the Montgomery bus boycott, the March on Washington, and his speeches on equality inspired millions. Georgia itself was a major battleground for civil rights. The Albany Movement, 1961–1962, aimed to desegregate the city of Albany but faced strong resistance from local authorities. While the movement did not achieve immediate success, it was an important learning experience for the broader movement. The passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were landmark victories that ended legal segregation and discrimination across the South, including in Georgia. 8. Economic transformation and the rise of modern Atlanta, 1970s to 1990s. In the latter half of the 20th century, Georgia, particularly Atlanta, underwent significant economic and political transformations. Atlanta emerged as the leading city of the South, becoming a center for international business, media, and culture. Companies like Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines, and CNN made Atlanta their headquarters, turning the city into a global commercial hub. The 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta showcased the city on the world stage, bringing in billions of dollars in infrastructure improvements and tourism. It also helped reshape the city's identity, marking its emergence as a major player in global commerce and culture. Politically, Georgia produced national figures such as Jimmy Carter, who served as the 39th President of the United States, and Andrew Young, a former civil rights leader who became the mayor of Atlanta and U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. 9. Political and demographic shifts in the 21st century, 2000s to 2020s. Georgia has seen significant demographic and political shifts in the 21st century. Once a reliably conservative state, Georgia has become increasingly competitive in national elections. This shift is largely due to the growing diversity of its population, particularly in urban and suburban areas. Metro Atlanta's rapid growth has brought new residents from across the country and around the world, transforming the state's political landscape. The 2020 elections marked a significant turning point for Georgia. In the presidential election, Georgia voted for a Democratic candidate for the first time since 1992, and in the Senate runoff elections of January 2021, the state elected 2 Democratic senators. This political shift has made Georgia a focal point in national politics, as debates over voting rights, immigration, and healthcare continue to play out in the state. 10. Cultural contributions and Georgia's modern identity. Georgia has long been a cultural powerhouse, particularly in music, literature, and film. The state is the birthplace of several legendary musicians, including Ray Charles, Otis Redding, and James Brown, who helped shape American music. In recent decades, Atlanta has become the center of the hip-hop music industry, producing internationally renowned artists like Outkast, T.I., and Migos. Georgia's literary tradition is equally rich, with writers such as Alice Walker, author of The Color Purple, and Flannery O'Connor, whose works explore themes of Southern identity, religion, and morality. In addition, Georgia has become a major hub for film and television production, earning the nickname Hollywood of the South. Movies such as The Hunger Games and Black Panther were filmed in Georgia, thanks to the state's generous tax incentives for filmmakers. The state's thriving entertainment industry has made it a key player in global culture, attracting talent and investment from around the world. Conclusion: Georgia's history is one of transformation, resilience, and influence. From its beginnings as a British colony to its critical role in the civil rights movement and its modern economic and cultural contributions, Georgia has shaped and been shaped by the broader currents of American history. The state's legacy is marked by both triumphs and struggles, from the economic success of the Cotton Kingdom to the tragedy of Native American removal, and from the devastation of the Civil War to the political and social victories of the Civil Rights era. Today, Georgia stands at the crossroads of tradition and modernity, balancing its rich historical heritage with its role as a leader in commerce, politics, and culture. As we look to the future, Georgia's story continues to evolve, reflecting the dynamic and diverse nature of the state and its people.